Welcome to Stay at Home Wellness, where we talk about why wellness is so different for stay at home moms and what to do about it. I'm Hannah Stewart from wellnesswithhannah.com, and today we are talking about what to do if you're feeling burnt out as a stay at home mom. And this is honestly so common among moms, and I don't think enough people talk about it or address it because I am part of these stay at home mom Facebook groups, and I see over and over again moms saying things like, I hate being a stay at home mom. I want to go back to work, or I don't even see the point. I just clean all day long every single day, and that's all I do. Why am I even doing this? And it's clear they have no vision. They are exhausted. And they're just really, really struggling in that season of life. And I've totally been in similar seasons to that as well. And I found some things helpful that I wanted to share with you all. But first, some of you might be wondering, what are some ways I can know that I am burnt out as a mom? What are some signs or symptoms that I am burnt out? One of the first ones that a lot of moms experience is that they just feel stressed all the time. And I would say that motherhood is a very stressful job, right? So it's not that you're just going to have these peaceful days where nothing goes wrong, but it isn't normal if you're just stressed out constantly throughout the whole day. It's helpful if there are breaks or times throughout the day you could catch your breath. And I know that's not always possible, but if you just feel like it's a normal thing where every day, all day long, you are exhausted, you're stressed out, you don't know what the schedule is, you have decision fatigue, you just feel like everything is chaotic all the time, that is a really big sign that you are feeling burnt out as a mom and might need to reevaluate some things. Another sign that you're burnt out is that you have no ideas or ambitions as a mom. And I've been in seasons like this where I get out of bed, I know my job is to take care of the kids, but I really don't feel at all inspired. I don't really see the point in what I'm doing. I just know I have to do it. But as soon as I get out of bed, I'm waiting for my husband to come home so he can help with the kids again. And that's not a great place to be either, because you know these kids are important, you know they're valuable, you want to pour your best into them. So it's a really sad place when you get to that spot of just wishing the day was over when it's just beginning. Another way you might be feeling burnt out, or another sign that you're burnt out, is that you're feeling like your work doesn't matter. And this comes up a lot for moms. I think some of this is from our culture as well, and we'll dive more into that later. But a lot of moms truly believe that they are wasting their talents by being a stay-at-home mom, and maybe the circumstance has made it so that they are a stay-at-home mom because they can't afford daycare, or maybe for whatever reason they decided initially it would be good for them to stay at home mom, but then when you look at your baby, you're like, this baby isn't going to remember this, this toddler isn't going to remember this. I'm just struggling. They don't even care. Like, I remember one time I was cutting up Elliot's grapes and he was just mad that I wasn't cutting them up fast enough, and he was like one, so there wasn't a whole lot I could do at that point. But I just remember thinking, I'm doing all of this for you, and what appreciation do I get? Nothing, So as a mom, sometimes we could get into these ruts of not seeing the bigger picture, not understand why we're doing something, and that could really, really affect us as a mom if we are feeling that way every single day, right? If we're feeling like my work doesn't matter, if we're just exhausted, if we're stressed all the time, and it can lead to a really bad spot of burnout. And some moms stay there. Some moms have found ways to get out of it. And I wanted to share with you a few ways that have really helped me when I am feeling burnt out as a mom, or like my work doesn't matter. So one of the first tips I have for you is, first, if you're a Christian, go to the Lord, because he actually gives us strength and he gives us perspective. When we spend time in his word, he gives us perspective. I can remember days, especially when my oldest, I had two and under, and we were in like a high discipline season, and I would just get down on my knees at the beginning of the day and ask that God would give me strength to be consistent and faithful and to be patient, because I just knew it was probably going to be overwhelming. There was probably going to be lots of discipline, and it was probably going to all happen while I was nursing my baby. That's just the way those days were going, and I just knew I so desperately needed the Lord's strength. And I think he really showed me that he does help us in those times and seasons when we need him the most. He is there for us, and he does give us that supernatural strength and patience. No, not all of the time. I still have had to ask my children to forgive me so many times, but I have seen him be faithful. And I think so often we get out our phones and we just Google something like, okay, I'm feeling stressed out. Let me look up a tip for a more peaceful morning. Let me look up another life hack. And I love tips. I love tricks. I love problem solving. I hate it when there's problems. I want everything to be peaceful and calm as much as possible. So I'm always looking for for ways to fix problems. But Christ is the one that our hope is in. Christ is the one that gives us strength, because ultimately some of our deepest problems as a mom are our sin nature, right? So if we are not having victory over that, if we are not trusting the Lord, it doesn't matter how many things on Google is telling us we could do, how many hacks there are, will not solve our sin nature, right? So we need the Lord's grace every day. So I really encourage you, if you haven't started a regular time in God's Word, if you aren't praying regularly for strength with dealing with your children or having perspective, I would highly recommend you do that. And that is for me too, right? Like, I can still go through slumps where, sure, I do my devotions in the morning, but I'm not meditating on what I read that day, or I'm not praying throughout the day for help or guidance from the Lord. So I think so often in motherhood, these moments that are really trying are actually meant to draw us closer to the Lord and to see his sovereign hand in all of it, and how he's using it both to shape our children, but also to shape us, which is super amazing. My second tip, if you're feeling burnt out as a stay-at-home mom, is to talk to an older mentor mom. This is like a famine in our current culture. I just know so many moms that have pretty much only like the same age in their friend demographic. And this is a huge disadvantage because our culture has blind spots, right? Our generation has blind spots. Every single generation has blind spots. So if we don't have an older woman in our life to speak truth to us, then we are missing out on that additional perspective, right? Another reason this is so key is because older moms have been through it before, so they remember how hard it was. A lot of times, a lot of the older moms I talk to do. Some do not. So those are the ones I necessarily call if it's like a really horrible day. I talk to the ones that do remember how crazy it can be sometimes, who are somewhat compassionate and practical at the same time. So, but they do remember, and then they also have the perspective to say, and that season passed, and my children are grown up now, and I miss certain things. Or they have specific tips, like sometimes you just need an older mom to say, why don't, instead of cooking this 5-course meal, you just make a crock-pot meal these days? How about you try that, Hannah? And I've had moms tell me that, and that was very helpful for me to recognize, okay, there's a way in which I need to lower my standard in some way. Some of you need an older mom to tell you to raise the standard in some way. And I don't know what that is, but that's the wonderful thing about an older mom that you can't even get from something like a podcast, right? So a podcast is great. If it's an older mom being interviewed, you can learn all kinds of wisdom about general discipline principles, general housekeeping principles, whatever. But sometimes we need an older mom to specifically come to us and look at our current life and our current tendencies and help us process, okay, you need an emphasis in this direction. This needs to change. For me, a lot of older moms have had me decrease some of my expectations for things like manners in my kids, but increase them in things like, oh, you can expect your child to work, things like that. They've had me decrease expectations when it comes to, I need a perfect house. I need everything to be clean. I had one older mom tell me she thinks I need to get a few more toys because she thinks my kids are bored. So it could be basic things like that, but it is really, really helpful to have someone that actually knows you, that is speaking into your life, that can give you perspective. Another example of this, I talk to my mother-in-law all the time, and I remember I was talking to her, and I'm a very emotional person, and she's much more like matter of fact, which I really appreciate. She balances me out very well. But I was telling her, did you ever just feel like you were a horrible mom? And there's just so many moms who are a better mom. They could just be a much better child for your child than you. I was just going on and on about how I just feel like I'm so inadequate and so ill-equipped. And she's like, yeah, I felt like that a lot, but then I just thought, who else is going to do it? And then I just decided I was the best person to do it, and I better give it as good of a shot as any, right? And just work hard at it. And that was really helpful for me, just to realize, like, sometimes I just need to shut down thought processes that aren't helpful and pursue ones that are helpful. And so speaking to her about that was really, really helpful. If I hadn't had an older mentor mom, if I was just talking to a peer, they probably would have said something like, oh yeah, I feel that way all the time. I just feel so inadequate, right? And peers are great for that. Peers are great for compassion, support, but when it comes to, you're probably needing to shift your perspective in this way, older moms are great at addressing that. So I would highly recommend, if you don't have an older mom in your life, please find one. Especially for so many of us, we have older women at our churches, and we just start asking them questions. So I would highly recommend it if you go to a church, just asking like a specific question if there's something you're struggling with. That is super, super helpful if you're feeling burnt out as a mom, or like there's no perspective whatsoever. My third tip, if you're feeling burnt out, is to look at pain points. So once you've talked to God, once you've talked to an older mentor that you trust, look at pain points in your life. So a pain point is something that is causing you repeated struggle every single day. So these could come in a variety of areas. This could be something as simple as a discipline problem with a child, and you realize, I cannot trust that this child will come to me if I call them. And that is causing a lot of problems. I need to work on this with this child, and that needs to be a big focus of mine. That has happened to me several times where I realize this child, because I can't trust them, is making it, because I haven't trained them, I really struggle to take them out in public with me. And suddenly, anytime we get into the car, it's this huge problem because I'm worried they're going to run into the street. Or anytime I try to hold their hand in public, they're pulling away from me or sitting down. That has happened to me before, right? And you realize, okay, we need to be practicing some of these things at home more. So it could be something like that where it's a discipline issue. It could be something as simple as a transition. So for us, for a long, long time, this still happens sometimes. It's not perfect. A huge pain point in our day was when I would wake the kids up at 4:30 and they were all still really, really sleepy from their naps. It'd be like 100 degrees outside because we live in Kansas and it's summer, and we'd be getting into the car. Everyone is crying because our car is black and it probably is 120 degrees in there. Like it's very uncomfortable, but everyone's screaming and crying because we have to go outside and they're tired. It was just like a wreck. And then we had to do it every single day to pick up Kirk from work. And so finally, for a while, I was just like, this is the way it is. This is the way my life is. My life is a struggle. No one can help me, kind of like a wallowing thing where it was just like, oh, it's 4:30. It's going to be a horrible time again. And eventually I recognized it as a pain point and something I needed to problem solve. And now what we do is they get a special snack when we get into the car. So now it's like an exciting thing. We get a snack. And if they fuss, I just take away one cracker. If they fuss, I take away another cracker or grape or whatever the snack is. It doesn't really take much. So I try to save like the exciting snacks for that time. And they both have their little cups. They carry them out to the car. And it has drastically reduced the amount of tears and drama, because instead of there being only a negative association of this boiling hot car that they have to get into, now there's this positive association. I don't do that for everything, right? I don't just use crackers to solve all of my problems and bribe my kids with snacks. But in this case, there was an understandably challenging thing where they had to be in these really, really hot car seats that have been in the sun. And so I wanted to make it more fun. And that solved the problem. And now the pain point is close to gone. It depends on the day. Because my kids, you can only do so much with a tired toddler. But it's greatly improved. So I would recommend looking at your life to see what your pain points are, right? Maybe for you, it is disorganization. And this is totally me at different seasons of life. I'm not naturally organized. Pretty much any system I've had to learn to be organized feels very counter nature, I guess, counter my personality or whatever. But the pain is so high of being disorganized that I've learned, okay, I need at least a few systems, right? So if you can't find shoes, if you can't find socks, maybe you need to think about that pain point. One thing that has helped us is putting our shoes and socks somewhere where the kids can reach them. So there's a little cabinet. I only have 2 pairs of shoes per child. And then the socks are in a drawer right above them so the kids could get them easily. When we come in the door, I could just tell them to put them away right away. And if I find them on the floor, I'm really working with them. It's like, oh, their shoes on the floor. What should we do? With just any time I find them. And Elliot is getting a lot better at this, to the point where he'll see his shoes and he'll go put them away, or he's in the bathroom, he takes them off, he goes and walks them over to the cabinet because it's a habit. And we're still working on that with Jack. Elliot's also much more systematic naturally. So I will let you know how it goes with older kids, but it's worth at least thinking about what is causing me stress in this moment instead of just wallowing. Because I think as moms, sometimes we could just think, my job is so hard, no one else understands, it's miserable, we're all miserable together. And that is not always helpful. Sometimes mom groups can kind of feed off of that, right? Where we just all commiserate how hard being a mom is, but nobody's ever trying to solve the problem. So if you don't want the problem solved, that's fine. But to me, if you're complaining about it, that means it's a problem enough that you want to fix it, right? I don't know. I know I tend to be too much of like I want to fix everyone's problems or whatever. So I'm trying to work on that in my friendships. But for me, if I'm complaining about it, I genuinely want it to change. So that's something to consider if it's something that's coming up again and again and again, and it is something you can control. Obviously, there are certain things you cannot control, and that's part of something God teaches me every day in motherhood is I'm not in control, but the Lord is, and it's so much better that He's in control anyways. But if there are things that you have dominion over in some way, I would recommend trying to problem solve instead of just wallowing in despair because your life is horrible. Because it's a lot more fun if you can figure out the pain points and then fix them. Another tip I heard from an older mom was practicing scenarios for when you go out in public. So this is what I mentioned earlier, but one of the pain points for me was when we went out in public, my kids wouldn't want to hold hands very well. They would be kind of pulling all the time. They might run off, or in the grocery store, maybe they want to touch things like that. So you can actually practice all of those things at home. And that has really, really helped. Another one is just like teaching them to sit for a little bit in a chair. And that has helped so many times when we need to sit somewhere in a waiting room or something like that. They practice having to sit somewhere even when they don't want to. So all of those things can just make your life so much simpler as a mom, and I would recommend them if you are employing any of them to try that. We're taking a quick break from our episode to let you know about our sponsor for today's episode, and that is Calm Max Trampoline. And I love this trampoline so much for kids if you're thinking about getting them a Christmas gift or birthday gift. I know right now Christmas is just around the corner, but this trampoline is awesome for a variety of reasons. It's actually just an Amazon trampoline. We got it off of Amazon, which made it super easy because I brought it to our door, which I love. But what I especially love is that it has several features that are really helpful. So one of them is that it comes in a variety of sizes. So it comes from an 8-foot size where it's just for little kids to jump on. So I have friends that have this size, and I think all 4 of their kids jump on it together. They're like 8 and under, and they just love that. We got the 10-foot size, which is a little bigger, but still not crazy huge, and it has a net and everything. And I love it because my husband and I can jump on it with our kids, but it's still small, because I think a lot of people think of getting a trampoline as like this huge investment. It's going to take up all their yard if they don't have a very big yard. And we don't have a huge yard, but the 10-foot trampoline fits really nicely in it. There's still space in our yard for other things. It's not just the trampoline. And it's made a really, really big impact on our life because our kids spend more time outside. They ask to go outside more often. They want to jump on it with us, and they also can play on it independently. And that is because of the cool little ladder it has, where it has like actual almost like steps on the ladder. It's not just rungs. So even a 1-year-old can climb up it. I witnessed 2, my own kid and someone else's kid, climb up this trampoline. And so I remember the other day I was looking outside. I supervise my kids sometimes from the window, now that they're a little older and aren't putting things in their mouth. I look outside and my kids are playing on the trampoline together because both of them can get on by themselves. And for toddler moms, this is a big win because most trampolines you either have to be able to pull yourself up on, which neither of my kids could do at this age, or you need someone to be out there constantly to boost you on and off. And I've been at other people's houses where they have a trampoline like that. And I know it's just a season, but I do love that they can just go out, get on independently, and have fun without needing me to mediate constantly. So if you are interested in that at all, go ahead, click the link below, and it will take you straight to the Calm Max trampoline that we personally have enjoyed. So thank you guys so much. Let's get back to our episode. My 4th tip is to stop viewing homemaking or being a stay-at-home mom as housework. This is something that our culture does all the time. They equate being a mom with sweeping. They equate being a mom with doing the dishes. They equate being a mom with doing the laundry. They say something like anybody could do laundry, so anybody could be a mom. But not anybody could do what your career was before, right? Like for me, I studied dietetics. My mom, she gave up a counseling degree, or she didn't give it up, but she stopped counseling, right? For a long time, and people said, well, you invested your whole life into this career, and now you're doing a job that anybody can do. And that rhetoric is not true, because homemaking is so much more than keeping house. And I actually have a whole blog post on this. I would love it if you click the link below just to check it out. It's one of my most popular blog posts, and I just feel so passionately about this. When I think about my mom staying home with us, giving up her career that was lucrative, that was a cool job, right? I do not think, oh, my mom did such a great job sweeping the floors. That is not what I remember about my mom at all. What I remember about my mom is the fact that she was there when I wanted to ask Jesus into my heart. She was the one that was there to help walk me through that. I remember my mom reading us books all the time on the couch. I remember my mom being there at midnight. She was like out sweeping the floor, and I had a guilty conscience about something. I just wanted to talk for a long time. So I just remember all of those little conversations throughout the day, but because she was there for all of those moments where I was feeling convicted about something, or I had a question about something spiritual, or just teaching life skills, right? Like there were so many times I just remember her talking again and again and again about being self-governed. That was a word that was thrown around in our house all the time and in our homeschool all the time. And I hated it at the time. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't like the most thrilling word at the time, but that has come back so many times, that training of being self-governed. So even if mom is working with another sibling on school, I need to figure out what is on my list. I need to find the book. I need to start on it by myself. And if you're self-governed, there's all these rewards, right? But I just like hear her voice so much in my mind when I'm approaching even like my work around the house, thinking I am in charge of my time. I don't need someone else to be telling me how to spend my time. I need to use it well because I am in charge of managing myself first. And the better I manage myself, the better I will be able to manage a household, right? So all of these things are things that I remember about my mom that have nothing to do with the cleanliness of our floors. My mom, I don't really remember. My mom tells me our house was not that clean growing up. I don't know. I really don't know. I remember her making these very nice home-cooked meals like homemade bread and beef stew. So she certainly wasn't slacking off in that regard. But I don't really think of the floor cleanliness when I think about my mom at all. But our culture just equates the two and leaves out this whole other piece, the whole piece of as you go, discipling your children. I remember my mom doing individual Bible studies with us every week. She would meet with us individually. We'd take turns playing with my younger brother. Well, we had a Bible study with her during our homeschool time, and she taught us how to do devotions. She taught us so much. And I just think that is what homemaking is. So like that is the whole point, is the relationship. She taught us how to deal with conflict within our siblings. And I feel like that has helped me a lot in my marriage, right? Learning how to bring up an issue politely, but still bringing it up and not stuffing it and then blowing up later. That has helped me so much. And all of those things are not doing the dishes. So what I'm not saying is that doing the dishes, cleaning your house doesn't matter to God. I'm not saying that at all. Even the most mundane tasks that you are doing, if you are a homemaker, matters to the Lord. He sees it. It could be worship to him, right? If we are doing it unto him, whether we eat or drink or whatever we do all to the glory of God. And so I've had to remember that in mundane jobs and in mundane parts of motherhood, God sees that I just changed the fifth stinky diaper today because my kid has diarrhea. He sees it even if no one else does. But what I am saying is that being a homemaker is more than that, or a stay-at-home mom, or whatever word you want to use, is so much more than that. And when our culture just equates it with being a house cleaner, then of course they say, why are you wasting your career? But when you recognize I am raising little humans that have souls, and when you look into their eyes and you think about what could they be when they grow up, maybe this kid, you just never know, right? Like even I think about just like my mother-in-law raising these sons, and they're wonderful, godly men, but just imagining like, wow, if Elliot someday, just having that imagination, I think, thinking on what is good, like, wow, if we could shape this pattern of him being really, really detail oriented, and sometimes that's negative because he picks up on negative things, but that's also really, really good quality because he is detail oriented and he helps me remember things. Like this could be a really great quality someday in a job, right? So just having that vision for these are human beings, they have eternal souls. Every day is an opportunity to pass the gospel to them in some way, to share with them about the goodness of God, even if they don't remember it. Elliot's already starting to remember little things. So I think even that, having a 3-year-old, is so encouraging to see that. But even if they don't remember it, God sees that. God sees your efforts of being faithful. And he is pleased by that if you are in Christ, because our works are made acceptable by Christ. So that's just a really, really happy thought. My fifth tip, if you are feeling burnt out as a stay-at-home mom, is that you might need to structure your days. This is because a lot of moms feel burnt out because of something called decision fatigue, or just feeling like there's chaos all the time, and you don't even know what you're trying to accomplish in a day. So of course you're going to get to the end of that day and feel like you haven't accomplished anything because you haven't. It's like you've just been driven about by whatever whims your children have. It can feel so chaotic. So I am not a structured person. So I am very sympathetic to people that don't want to be tied down, don't want to have to do the same thing every single day. But I will tell you, even though I am a structure person, it has helped me so much to have structure. And I was shocked by my mother-in-law because I've always thought of her as a very structured person because I knew about how she homeschooled and raised children. I was shocked when she told me she's not a structured person either, and that her kids forced her to be structured. And I feel very, very similarly, where I like a little bit more spontaneity. I like being able to go out with my friends, but I found it so helpful for my kids and for me if we have times of the day where we have a routine and we know exactly what to expect. So I talk about this all the time, but we have a big breakfast routine where we do breakfast, family devotions, math, we have our chores, and our kids, it just works a lot more smoothly because they know what to expect. So they're not asking randomly, can I get up from the table? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? I'm not being battered with all of these questions like I used to be because they know what's expected for at least the first hour and a half of the day, right? And then if you have a lunchtime routine, that can help. And even if you aren't a structured person at all, maybe just think through the day before. I do this sometimes. Just think through what are like 2 things we plan to do today, whether it's going on a walk, going on a bike ride. Then tell your kids about it because then you're committed. At least for me, my kids remember if we're going on a bike ride, they remember we're going to Aldi today, and then you're committed. You're going to do it now. So I would really recommend, even if you just can't have it in you to have a structured schedule, have some kind of plan for the day. So that way you are leading those children instead of them leading you, because especially if you have 2 or more, well, they might have 2 different ideas, right? And then it's one person asking you, the other person asking you, and then you're like breaking up a fight. Versus if you said, today, everyone, at the breakfast table, we are going to the grocery store. So we are going to do a routine, and then we are going to do the dishes and do our chores. Then we are going to get ready to go to the grocery store. Then suddenly there isn't all this, I want to go to the park. I want to do this. I want to do this. If you could set the vision early, get them excited, say, what do you want to get at the store? Do you think we should, what are we running out of? My kids love to, Elliot especially, he's like our little inventory person. When he's older, he'll totally be that for me. I'll be like, go take inventory of everything, because he's very detail oriented, so he loves to notice, we're out of blueberries, Mom, we're out of this, we need to get this at the store. So that's like a very fun conversation. So you know your kid, you know what will draw them in and get them excited about the day, but just setting that tone of, this is the plan. Isn't this great? That is so helpful for helping the day go more smoothly as a stay-at-home mom. And it can help you feel a lot less burnt out because you're actually accomplishing things through the day. You aren't being pestered by questions where you aren't even sure what the answer should be to them because you don't know what the plan is for the day. And it could just really cut down on all the decision fatigue as a mom. Hey guys, I wanted to jump in and let you know about 2 opportunities that I have for you. So the first one is a free webinar that I've created just for stay-at-home moms who are wanting to learn more about wellness. And the reason is because I truly believe that wellness is totally different if you're a stay-at-home mom because your life is so intertwined with your kids. And so I really don't think that a 20-year-old personal trainer, helpful as they are to so many people, if they don't understand what it's like to be a mom, it is very difficult to give wellness advice to a mom. So I created a whole webinar that dives into why wellness is different as a stay-at-home mom. It goes into how to wake up on time if you are struggling with that and are waking up with your kids and are in that vicious cycle of feeling stressed from the instant you wake up because your children woke you up through the baby monitor. That is not a good place to be, and I've totally been there. This webinar dives into working out postpartum. I know a lot of moms really struggle with overwhelm about where to start postpartum and have just gotten out of the habit totally of working out because they have a new baby, right? And all of their routines are different. How to develop routines when you are used to an employer developing them for you and now you have to develop them for yourself, which is a huge change. And we even dive into getting things done with kids around. And the reason for this, even though it doesn't directly pertain to wellness, it absolutely affects your wellness routines, because if you cannot get anything done while your kids are awake and you feel like you have to be entertaining them 24/7, then you will not have time to have wellness routines, right? Because when your kids are asleep, you have to clean your whole house from top to bottom and cook all the meals, and you have no time while they're sleeping to work on any routines to take care of your own body, right? So in this webinar, I dive into all of that. I will link it below. The key with the link is click the link and then you wait for the pop-up, and then the pop-up is where you enter your name and your email address, and then it will give you a link that you can copy for the webinar. I think that was a little bit confusing for people last time, so I wanted to make that clear that that's how that works. So wait for the pop-up and then make sure to copy and paste the link, and you will be able to access that webinar, no problem. The second thing I wanted to let you guys know about is that if this episode or other episodes have really resonated with you at all, and you're recognizing that you're a mom that is struggling with wellness, this transition to motherhood has not been easy, and you need a little bit additional support, I would love it if you click the link below to book a call with me. I would love to be able to meet with you and be a habit coach for you, whether that's 1 time or 10 times, and be that support, because I know for me, sometimes I just need someone to talk to, even just for an hour, and to process, like, this is what I'm struggling with, and just problem solve with someone else. I'm a very verbal processor, and sometimes I just need someone to talk about things with and figure out, okay, this is the next step I should take, and then I'm good to go from there. So even if it's 1 time, that's totally fine. But if that interests you at all, I would love it if you went ahead and click the link below to book a call with me. Thank you guys so much. My 6th and final tip is to remember your vision. So remember why you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom in the first place. For me, I remember starting out when I first had Elliot, I just thought it was the most meaningful job in the world, because I remembered he has a soul. Before I was working a lot more with objects in my job and screens and planning menus, which is great. But I was like, I have this child. I get to share the gospel with him. I get to teach him all these skills. Even just like if you teach your kid basic life skills, like think where that could take them. Think if you teach your kid how to interact well with other people, or how to be hospitable, or how to serve. That is super exciting to think about what kind of adult they could be someday if the Lord wills and he blesses them with salvation, right? So that's a really, really encouraging thing. Versus if you are only thinking of homemaking as wiping the tables yet again, or sweeping the floor for the 6th time today because your kids are messy, that will really, really change your perspective and bring you down, honestly, emotionally, and it could just feel really, really discouraging. So I'd really encourage you to remember your big vision. Remember why you're doing what you're doing, and then use that vision to determine if anything needs to change. So for some of you, maybe your vision was doing discipleship with your kids, and the reason you are feeling discouraged as a mom is because you aren't doing that. And so maybe you do need to set up a time where you read the Bible with your kids, or study with them, or whatever it looks like for that age of kids, right? Maybe you need to teach them how to do a quiet time and hold them accountable to that. But if you have that big vision, sometimes it can help you realize, oh, I've been really emphasizing eating organically, cooking from scratch, but I've been missing like the whole vision of why I even wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, right? Or maybe for some of us, we actually need to lower the standard. This happens to me a lot, where I have these lofty ideas of what I want to get done in a day. And then I think about my vision for being a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom, and I recognize most of my vision has to do with relationships. I want to cultivate good sibling relationships. I want to build memories as a family. I want to teach them to have a relationship with God. I want to teach them how to interact with authority. And then I look at my schedule, that is all task. I want to get this done, make a meal for this person, do this. And I have to recognize, okay, there's a little bit of an incongruence here. So I need to adjust some of my to-do list items to actually involve relationships. So whatever side or whatever thing you're more prone to struggling with, looking at your overall vision can kind of help self-diagnose. Okay, this might be what I'm struggling with as a mom. Maybe I feel like my job as a mom is meaningless because I'm not actually accomplishing the big vision. And even if it's just a little thing, like teaching your child a catechism question, that can help you see the real purpose when you're reading that catechism question about, we can only be saved by believing in Jesus, things like that. One that always gets me, it's the one about, it talks about having a soul, and it's like, do you have a soul? The answer to it, I have a soul that will last forever. And so my little 3-year-old is quoting this to me, and I'm like, oh my God, like he has a soul that will last forever. That just gives you so much perspective, right? When they're saying it out of their little 3-year-old mouth, they have no idea what that means, but you do as a mom. So I just really encourage you as a mom, if you're struggling with burnout, try some of these tips. Try asking the Lord for strength if you haven't already, because so often we go straight to problem solving without even talking to the Lord about our struggles. I would encourage you, really, really strongly, to talk to an older mom. Highly recommend, if there's an older mom that has raised godly children, go ask her for counsel, because boy, they do have a lot of it. I would recommend looking at pain points in your life. So once you've gotten past some of the broad stroke issues, sometimes you just have these practical problems that really need to be addressed. So look at those pain points. Stop viewing homemaking as housework, guys. That will definitely kill your excitement about being a stay-at-home mom if that's all you think you're doing in life. Structure your days at least a little bit. I know some of you are not structure people, but just a little bit of structure goes a long ways. And last, please go ahead and remember your vision. Remember why you're doing what you're doing. So if you like this episode, episode, I would really appreciate it if you liked it, you shared it with your friends, and if you click that subscribe button. A lot of you aren't actually subscribed yet, so please do that because it tells the algorithm you like this content. It also tells me you like it, so I can make more of it for you. So thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of Stay at Home Wellness.